Hello everybody, Ketchy1380 with Ketchy Gaming, and today I wanted to start something that I kind of came up with the idea a couple weeks ago. And maybe in some weird act of fortuitous timing on part of the universe, the world, whatever, it kind of coincided with the showing of a few still shots of the cast, at least for Link and Zelda, for the live action movie that's coming up. With Bo Bragginson playing Zelda and Benjamin Ainsworth playing Link. And I will admit, when I made my video when they announced the cast, that the only thing I could really be mad about was his hair color, and I think it didn't need to be said that I figured that they would change his hair color or give him a wig, and that's what they did, so I can't even be mad about that anymore. Not that I was before, it was just like a minor thing, like I said. There are some questions that were answered, like what version of Link are they going with, and it looks like the kind of typical Ocarina of Time adult Link through, let's say, Skyward Sword Link, with the green tunic and the tan/brownish pants, undershirt, and arm guard, stuff like that. Zelda looks like an entirely different design altogether, but that's neither here nor there. The point of this video was for me to explore media that has been done for The Legend of Zelda. Well, sort of. I'm not counting the cartoon in the late 80s or early 90s. I can't remember which. Mainly because it's only like 11 episodes and it's really bad. No, what I'm talking about is the Legend of Zelda manga series. Particularly the Twilight Princess series, composing of 11 different volumes, authored by Akira Himikawa. Before I started reading it, I knew about an Ocarina of Time series as well, but they actually linked the two of them together. So I thought, why not? I'll get that series as well. And I kind of fell down a rabbit hole by accident, mainly due to the fact that Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess aren't the only games he's covered. So he starts out with the Ocarina of Time. He also followed up with the sequel, Majora's Mask, and it didn't stop there. He also wrote one for the Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, and another one for the Minish Cap and the Phantom Hourglass. And lastly, the Four Swords Adventure, just titled Four Swords. So I took a look, and Akira Himikawa has been writing these since 1999. He's had over 20 years of writing the Legend of Zelda manga. With Twilight Princess being the last that I'm aware of, doesn't mean there aren't others, but I think they just kind of stopped with those. So let me get something kind of out there. I am not a manga kind of guy. I mean, I've dipped my toes in just a little bit here. I'm not, well, I guess maybe you could call me a tourist, or maybe just a filthy casual, whatever you want to label me. But my experience with manga is very limited to only a few books, or I should say series. Where I will admit most of what I have read has been My Hero Academia 1 through 20 and the first box set of One Piece. So me being able to judge these things on their qualities in terms of their art and drawing, lettering, and stuff like that, I don't know. I'm far from an expert. I mean, you've already seen my take on games. I don't think I can really judge manga all that well. But this isn't exactly my first foray into gaming literature, so to speak. My first outing was back when Halo came out. They did the Fall of Reach, and then I read the book that was based off of the game, The Flood, with this being my main source of inspiration for the idea in this whole entire video. And I will admit I dabbled just a little bit back when I was into World of Warcraft. I have a few books here or there of World of Warcraft. I have mainly Dragonlance novels, and I probably would have been better served to go with a Warhammer if I'd known better as a child, but I didn't. But yeah. So going back to the Flood, like I said, that was the inspiration for this, because how do you cover a piece of media like a video game and transform it into, or maybe translate it into a different form of media? The problem with The Flood is that it was exceptionally boring. Yeah, there were some interesting spots here or there that weren't in the game that they took liberties and made up. But reading about going down the hallways and shooting grunts and elites just wasn't all that exciting. And I will admit that going through the dungeons and solving puzzles wasn't exactly going to be something thrilling. And I figured I would go through the manga series and maybe get an idea of how someone might go through altering a game or a series with specific elements and applying it to a different form of media altogether. I could already tell you that a lot of liberties were taken with the Twilight Princess series, and this video is kind of going to be an experiment to see how much I can get away with. After all, the Japanese are rather protective of their intellectual property, so we're going to see how much I can get away with in terms of showing you a few panels here or there from the manga. Now, I will say, a lot of these Zelda mangas are a bit on the brief side. After all, they contain a whole entire series in one volume, and there's some issues with reading everything in just one go. For instance, in the Ocarina of Time manga, when Link transforms into an adult, Akira apparently felt the need to recap events of Link as a child. Now, I'm thinking because there's probably months separating the different volumes, that there may have been a need to actually semi-recap, but not really, in my opinion. But there are other issues with it outside of that. There are several rough transitions, even all the way up to the Twilight Princess manga. And not just like in terms of scenery, just like how people are acting, talking, and doing things in the manga. I mean, overall, the art is pleasant to look at, but some of the panels, the actions feel rather abbreviated, is probably the best way I can describe it. You're like, what happened? Like, there's a whole bunch of panels that got cut out, it feels like. I mean, I kind of get that. Paper and ink, getting that down is expensive, so making it cheap as possible to produce. Not to mention making it affordable. But some of the panels can be somewhat confusing, which leads me to a different point. I've read a good chunk of the Ocarina of Time, mainly because I wanted to compare art styles. After all, it was Akira's first manga series with the Zelda series overall. But also, it's the only other book where Link is actually an adult, so I wanted to see how he handled the art style in the Ocarina of Time versus Twilight Princess. Now, I have no idea how much Nintendo got involved in that whole entire thing, but there's a very distinct tonal difference in terms of just art and writing between the Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, even though they're technically direct sequels to each other, at least in the canon of the manga. The best way I can describe Akira's adaptation of the Zelda series is, I don't know, making up a word of my own. Let's call it the animification of the Zelda series, where it feels like he's trying to make it more in line with, let's say, a Japanese anime, with some art style that seems pretty familiar to typical anime, some goofiness here and there, particularly in his earlier books, like the Ocarina of Time. You don't really see that much in the Twilight Princess. Yes, it's there, but not in the same way. Or nearly as goofy and lighthearted. Best way I can probably describe it is with, say, Dragon Ball versus Dragon Ball Z, and maybe even Dragon Ball Super. An evolution of the art style, along with the subject matter of what's going on, causes a distinct change in how the author slash artist handles the story and the conversion to the manga. The manga starts out with Minda being usurped by Zant, kind of spoiling her appearance because that was kind of the point at the end of the game to show what she looked like, but oh well, I guess they just go for it right off the bat. And then transitioning over to Link living in Ordon Village, where they've greatly expanded it, which kind of makes sense. I mean, there's limitations to the hardware at the time, so yeah, it was just a tiny little thing in the game, but they've increased its size and scale for the manga. It has Link being Link, typically what you see in the beginning of the game, interacting with the various villagers, but particularly some of the main characters, like all the children that get kidnapped in the beginning of the game, as well as Ilya, Epona, doing some goat herding and stuff like that. And it's probably one of the few times you'll see some of the goofiness that you saw in his earlier works, particularly when he's sumo wrestling with the kids and they do the whole Japanese poop needle thing up Link's butt. But they also have an element of doom and gloom that he added, like the crops are wilting away and rotting before they have a chance to harvest them and use them for actual food. And the forests have an eerie, dangerous feeling to it outside of their little hamlet out in the middle of nowhere. In addition to all that, they gave Link a bit of an origin story. And I know I keep saying he actually wrote this in collaboration with two other people who are credited as A. Honda, and I'm not joking with that, along with S. Nagano. So back to the origins of Link. They have him originally starting out in a village or maybe city or fortress out on the western edge of Hyrule, out by the desert where the prison is. And they are there to guard it to keep people and other things from going to the prison. Link and his friends in the village were kind of messing around, and they have a sword that I guess is part of the legend around the fortress that's rather sinister looking, but very Sword in the Stone-esque, similar to the Master Sword, but not the antithesis of it like I thought they were going to do. But anyways, Link pulls the sword out as a challenge from his fellows, and everybody gets sucked into a black portal, except for Link, who is saved by the skeletal warrior who was the hero of time. I mean, they play it off as being creepy, but if you've played the games, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, yes, Link is terrified in the manga, but everybody who's played the games knows who he is and why he would save Link from being sucked into darkness. With the guilt that he thought he just destroyed everybody in his little fortress village, he runs off and he makes his way to Ordon down in the south, where he settles down and becomes a farmer slash rancher. With this origin story being revealed to us through a flashback told by Link. It then takes a turn for the worst in terms of the people living in Ordon. A large group of monsters then starts storming through Ordon, killing the villagers. Like blood and everything. You see villagers being impaled in the manga, and some of them are covered in blood. It's like, whoa, okay, this went into territory that the games never went to. It then has Link confronting King Bulbin. You know, the guy with the two long horns and the giant axe. And unlike the game where he just receives a bump on the head, he actually starts to fight him. He even stabs him, causing him to bleed. Link is then distracted by the various minions that he sends after him, and while he's fighting them, King Bulbin chops his arm off. And he falls into the pool of healing right outside the village. He is then healed by the spirit, magically reattaching his arm, which I guess thankfully that axe was super sharp and didn't make hamburger out of the meat and bone in between. But when I first read this manga, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, not only was it a major departure from Link being bumped in the head, like I mentioned earlier, and his arm being chopped off, it wasn't something I was kind of expecting from the manga series. And this is the first time I've read any of them. I started off with Twilight Princess, not really knowing that he made others. I mean, yeah, they've been recommended to me, and I just sort of ignored them, thinking they were actually guides because I didn't read the description. But yeah, those panels were a bit of a surprise to me to see Link get his arm chopped off. So after his arm is reattached, he chases after King Bulbin trying to save the children in Ilia, where he comes in contact with the Wall of Twilight, where he gets pulled into it. Which again, they make it seem far more horrific than what happened in the game. And that's where book 1 ends. I mean, a lot of it felt like filler. I mean, I guess to some degree it was similar to the game where they just had you putzing around before things ramped up. Well, this one seemed to take a little bit more liberty in setting up events before being attacked and all the kids being kidnapped by the moblins. That part felt like it dragged on a little bit too long, at least for my taste. That's just a taste of what's to come. And in terms of the movie, I am fairly confident that they're just going to have to go with something completely new and original. They may take elements from the games and stuff like that and make references here and there, but I don't think there's any real good way to adapt any one particular game into a movie, especially when you're bridging a story down to, an hour and a half? 2 hours at most. But I'll keep going with this, and I'll try and get through all 11 books. Anyways, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Have a good one.